Welcome to this explainer. Today we're looking at a huge, honestly baffling puzzle at the very heart of the modern American food system. How is it that a country producing more than enough calories to feed absolutely everyone somehow struggles with widespread malnutrition, obesity, and diet-related diseases? It's a massive contradiction. And to make sense of it, we really need to completely rethink what food security actually means in an age where food is literally everywhere. Okay, let's dive into this. We've got a lot to cover. First, we'll start with the paradox of abundance. Second, we'll unpack the NOVA framework. Third, we'll look at the case against NOVA. Fourth, we'll explore the MAHA movement disruption. And finally, we'll get into the real AI solution.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the paradox of abundance, and this whole idea of caloric security versus nutritional security.
So how exactly does food insecurity keep happening when we have so much food around us? You know, in emerging economies, food insecurity usually just means there literally isn't enough food to go around. But in advanced economies like the US, the dynamic is totally flipped. The American food system is incredibly sophisticated. It's built for maximum yield and pure industrial throughput. We're talking record harvests and massive protein output. We are really good at making sure food is available. But why the simultaneous surge in type 2 diabetes, or cardiovascular disease, or even micronutrient deficiencies? Well, it turns out simply growing mountains of corn, soy, and wheat doesn't automatically equal a healthy nation.
And a massive piece of that puzzle is right here. Current estimates suggest that a staggering 55 to 60% of all caloric intake in the US comes from ultra-processed foods. I mean, let that sink in for a second. More than half. Ultra-processing isn't just an edge case for occasional late-night snacking anymore. It has literally become the dietary center of gravity for the entire nation.
To really grasp this, we need to understand that food security isn't just one single metric. It's built on four distinct pillars: availability, access, utilization, and stability. Now, the United States gets an absolute A+ in that first pillar, availability. We've got that covered. But the rest of the foundation, it's cracking. We have deep stress fractures in economic access. Think food deserts and major affordability gaps. We have stress fractures in nutritional utilization, basically meaning our bodies aren't getting what they need because the diet quality is so poor. And we completely lack dietary stability because we lean so heavily on processed stuff. Ultimately, diet quality, not raw agricultural output, is the actual binding constraint on our health.
Which brings us to Section 2, unpacking the NOVA framework and how we classify what we eat.
If we're going to talk about fixing diet quality, we have to know how to categorize it, right? Enter the NOVA classification system. This is the prevailing framework analysts use right now, and it groups foods based on the extent and purpose of industrial processing. Now, it is extremely influential in today's health conversations. But a quick caveat here, while NOVA is a really helpful way to look at the system, it's not scientifically closed off. We shouldn't treat it as settled doctrine. It's a lens to view the problem, not a strict law of physics. The NOVA system essentially sorts our food into four distinct steps. Step 1 is unprocessed or minimally processed foods. Think fresh veggies, fruits, or eggs. Step 2 moves into processed culinary ingredients, things like oils and butter. Step 3 covers processed foods like canned vegetables or fresh cheeses. But Step 4, that's where things get really heated. Ultra-processed foods, or UPFs. These are the highly industrial formulations. They're packed with refined substances, additives, artificial flavorings, and they are engineered entirely for long shelf life, mass scale, and to be incredibly hard to stop eating.
Moving right along to Section 3, the case against NOVA. Is processing inherently bad?
We have to ask, is the actual mechanical act of processing food the real villain here? Well, we have to talk about correlation versus causation. Epidemiological studies absolutely show a strong link between eating a lot of UPFs and having terrible health outcomes. That correlation is rock solid. But does the processing itself actually cause the disease? We saw a similar debate decades ago during the cigarette wars, where it took a really long time to move from observing associations to proving direct harm. Today, randomized trials do show that eating a UPF-heavy diet makes people eat more calories overall, but the exact mechanism is still pretty murky. Is it the chemical additives? Is it how fast we eat it? The energy density? Or just generally poor dietary habits? The science is still working overtime to untangle this.
And this highlights a pretty major gray area with NOVA, which we can call classification ambiguity. Nutrient-dense foods like fortified whole-grain cereals or yogurts get thrown into the exact same ultra-processed bucket as sugary sodas and salty chips. The system basically treats processing intensity as a proxy for how healthy something is. But that begs a really important question. Is the health signal we're seeing coming from the fact that it was processed in a factory, or is it simply coming from the underlying nutrient composition? Plus, let's be fair for a second. Historically speaking, processing has been a massive hero for food security. Things like pasteurization, fortifying foods with vitamins, freezing, canning, those literally delivered enormous public health gains. They improved food safety, preserved essential nutrients, and allowed food to be shipped safely across the globe. If we just throw a blanket indictment over all processing, we risk erasing a century of life-saving progress. The core problem probably isn't processing per se. It's processing that is optimized strictly for commercial scale and endless shelf life, rather than how our bodies actually digest and use the food.
All right, Section 4. The MAHA movement disruption, a crisis of trust and governance.
All this systemic tension is sparking a fascinating disruption in how the industry is governed. Take the Make America Healthy Again, or MAH movement. They're exposing a really profound structural truth. Imagine a new food product passes every single FDA regulatory threshold, every quality check, and every shelf life validation. On paper, it is technically perfect. But then, a massive consumer backlash builds over a specific dye or a seed oil, and retailers quietly pull it from the shelves. What just happened? Nothing failed operationally, but everything failed systemically. Public trust has fundamentally shifted way past FDA standards. The movement's core argument is essentially that our food system is producing outcomes that are technically compliant but societally unacceptable.
This captures the massive governance problem we're stuck in brilliantly. Imagine a decision engine with two totally different pathways. On one side, you have Pathway a health-optimized system. That one cares about biological integrity and long-term human outcomes. On the other side, you have Pathway B, our established scale-optimized system. That one is all about economic efficiency and massive industrial throughput. Right now, both of these logics are fully active in our society, but they are totally colliding. There is no governed arbitration between them. We have an incredibly profitable industry designed to extract and distribute food at high margins, crashing headfirst into a movement demanding actual metabolic health.
Which leads us to our final part, Section 5, the real AI solution, governing risk and trust.
So how on earth do we actually bridge this gap? Banning a single controversial ingredient won't fix the underlying architecture. And while everyone thinks artificial intelligence is pure magic right now, we have to be super careful. AI is an amplifier. If a food company just uses an algorithm to quickly swap out a PR nightmare ingredient so their label looks clean on some green dashboard, they haven't fixed anything. They're just masking system drift. If deployed incorrectly, AI will simply accelerate these formulation cycles and scale confusion way faster than any human regulator could possibly catch. But if we use it right, AI could genuinely be transformative. Think about formulation intelligence. This isn't just tactically replacing a seed oil, but deeply understanding the chemistry to recreate that food safely using better ingredients. We can use safety intelligence to shift from just detecting contamination after people get sick to predicting risk preemptively across the entire supply chain. And we can totally redesign our supply chain architecture. We could build systems that don't just optimize for the absolute lowest cost, but actually maintain resilience when raw materials suddenly break down.
Ultimately, fixing the paradox of abundance isn't as simple as declaring war on processed foods. And it's certainly not about letting an algorithm choose our ingredients. It requires fundamentally redesigning trust and fixing the incentives at the very beginning of the process. The companies that win the future of food won't just be the ones with the cleanest marketing labels. They will be the ones who can definitively answer this vital question. Who defines acceptable risk in our food system? And how is that decision actually governed, validated, and defended? Definitely something to chew on the next time you're walking down the grocery aisle. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you next time.